Hello, welcome back to Mark's House and Garden UK, where something very curious seems to be happening to two of my four lollipop olive trees. Let me explain. In this long, narrow border along the side of the cottage, I have four standard lollipop olive trees. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the story behind these olives is I've had all four of these olives for about 9 years. The first 5 or 6 years of their lives, they stayed in a single pot, and then I repotted them. And after I repotted them, they came back to life. I moved here 3 years ago and decided to plant them in the ground, and they've been in the ground here for 3 years. Now, what I've observed after this winter is that these two, the first two in line, seem to have survived winter really, really well, whereas these two have really struggled. I'll bring the camera in close and you can get an idea of a comparison between the two. So if we focus firstly on the two that I think have done relatively well, this one and this one, you can see that most of last year's leaves are still on the plant. And if I look in a bit closer, where those leaves emerge from each of the stems, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of little baby leaves starting to form. It's still got good colour. It's got good shape, and it's very flexible, which indicates to me that it's still very much alive. The only thing I would say about these two trees is there's a bald patch in the middle. But that's quite normal for olive trees. They grow where there is light, so as they get bigger and as the light is excluded from the centre, they grow at the tips, and then you've got this thing called apical dominance, where the apex tip or the apex bud suppresses growth further down the branch. So I think these are very normal, happy looking olive trees. 1, 2 of my 4. Let's go and have a look at the others. And incidentally, what you're seeing here with these olive trees, I'm not particularly worried about. I'm not overly concerned. And in fact, in this video, I'm going to sort it out. But look at the state of this one. Hopefully you can see it against my blue coat. Virtually all the leaves have disappeared. A few leaves on the extremities, but those leaves that do remain are looking brown and dead, and many of these branches have lost their flexibility and dried out, so those branches are also dead. Same is true of that one as is with this one here. Again, compare that to the one I showed you earlier. It's just no comparison, is it? Now, in a moment, I'm going to create a hypothesis as to why I think this has happened, but before I do that, there's something interesting that I do want to show you on this one, and I will get hold of the camera and take you in close to show you something. Right, just look at this. Look there in front of my finger. Despite the fact that it's bare, sad, and feeling sorry for itself, everywhere there is signs of life. Even down here in the centre, there are new leaves, new buds starting to form. And again, all the way up along these branches here, tiny little buds. So it's not dead yet. I think it should have had the shock of its life. There's some more growth there towards the tip. Now just remember, no growth at the bottom, growth at the top, because of that thing called apical dominance. The apex bud sends back a hormone which suppresses the growth further down, which is why plants grow out towards the light and go bare in the middle. And if you cut them back, they bush out again. That's apical dominance. But let's not be too worried about this, because look, right into the center there, new growth. So now I'm going to give you my hypothesis, tell you what I think has gone wrong and how we will put it right. Now, I don't know about you, but I've always found plants to be quite consistent. Under the same circumstances, two identical plants will perform in exactly the same way, unless one of them's got a disease. So these 4 olive plants were bought at the same time, planted at the same time, came from the same supplier. They're all the same age, and they've been treated in exactly the same way. Or have they? Right. I'm stood here in the centre. The two to my right have done relatively well, and the two to my left have done badly. And I put it down to one thing and one thing only, and that is the wind. We get a very, very strong prevailing wind coming over that wall all winter long. And whilst there's a bamboo hedge here, it doesn't stop the wind, it lets the wind through. I think this is nothing more and nothing worse than wind damage. Those two are in the lee of the house. They're sheltered from that prevailing wind. So I think that's why they've fared better. What am I going to do to sort it out? Well, the answer to me is really straightforward. The two that have not done incredibly well, I'm going to give a really heavy, severe haircut. And the other two, I'm just going to give a light trim. And I'm going to feed all four with a little bit of slow release. Now, bear in mind, these have been in the ground for 3 years. So they've already got roots down. They'll already have access to food. So they don't really need feeding, but that will just give them a bit of a tonic. By pruning them back, and you'll see what I'm going to do in a minute, it will stimulate them into new growth, and those roots will start to provide food for that new growth. Now, come next winter, if I don't sort this wind out, exactly the same thing will happen. So I do intend to build a contemporary screen along the edge of this bamboo. After I've done that, by the way, I'm going to take all the leaves off that bamboo so that from the other side it looks quite striking against this black contemporary screen, but you can see that in another video. So let's get on with it. Now, bear in mind, what you are going to see will look quite aggressive and brutal and probably quite dramatic, because I am going to give them a really severe haircut. But I'm also going to talk about how you can tell if the olive is still alive. And I'm also going to show you one that I did this to only 4 weeks ago, and already it's bringing back into life. So let's get on with this pruning. Let's deal with this one first. And I'm going to position myself behind it so that hopefully you can see it against my coat again. Right, how can you tell if it's still alive? Well, if the branches are still flexible, that's a good sign. If they're making new leaves, that's clearly another good sign. If you snip across them and there's green in there, that's another good sign of life. And if you get your thumbnail and rub it up against a bit of the bark, if it's green just below the surface, that's another good sign. Now, it's pretty obvious to me that these are not dead. They've just had a really big shock. So what I'm going to do very first is just get access. I'm just going to take all this external growth away like that, using my shears. And you'll be thinking, there's not a single leaf left on that olive, and you'll be absolutely right. And as I said, I did this 4 weeks to another olive tree, and I'm about to show you the results. Now that I could leave like that, but I want to go a little bit further. I just want to go into some of these thicker branches below here, because that will stimulate some growth underneath here, which will form that ball. So people get quite precious and protective about olives. I can understand, because they're a lovely plant and they're not cheap, but you can afford to be quite brutal with them. In we go. Right, that's done. Looks shocking, doesn't it? Looks like we might have killed it. I promise you we haven't, and I will give you an update in due course, and it will appear at the top left hand corner of the screen and in the description box below this video. Right, that's that one done. I'll do exactly the same to the other one. In terms of these other two, I'm not going to do anything nearly quite so dramatic. I'm just going to trim them back, just to give them a bit of a more compact shape, and let light in a bit lower down. And anywhere where I cut, I will be removing the apex bud and stimulating growth just below it. So that's one done. I'm already quite happy with that. Might just take a few of these underside ones off just to help it to bush out down there. And the same on this one. So there we are, that little job is almost done. I'm just now going to scatter a small amount, a capful at most, of the slow release around the bottom. And as it rains, that will dissolve and leach some nutrients down into the soil, but it's not really necessary. It's just belt and braces. They've already got deep roots. They'll be feeding themselves, and within about a month they'll all be covered in new growth. Now, I don't know about you, but I think the two that look better now look worse, and the two that look worse now look better. But I'm happy with that, because I know that in about a month's time all four of them will be making massive improvements. Happy days. Hope you've enjoyed that. One word of caution: if you're growing olive trees for olives, you must remember that the olives will form on last year's growth. So if you prune all of last year's growth off, they won't form any flower buds, and therefore they won't form any olives. I'm not doing these for fruit, I'm doing these for shape, lollipop shapes. See you soon for some more olive tree adventures. Bye for now.